will be more observations, and the next time we'll present some our model result. I think most people use the EOF and then FFT most in the climate research. And do we have a mouse here or just this one? Okay. The screen. Okay. This one. Yeah, I'll use the mouse. I use the mouse.
No, sorry.
That's right. I use MOSFET, easier. So usually, like if you use the UF and calculate SST along the tropical Pacific regions, sometimes you got PDO and sometimes you got EOF. And then if you look at the time series or the spectrum of the PDO and the EOF, it seems like they share pretty close the spectrum. Only the PDO have more like a decadal time scale. So it's, for me, it's just like this is my previous paper. When I submit, the reviewer asked me, yeah, why you do this, you know? It seems, for me, it seems like this method, the EOF or the FFT already being used like decades already. This shouldn't have any mystery here, but it seems like there's a lot of things hidden in the we are using the FAT and EOF for like a black box. We don't know why exactly inside. So when review asked me what is FAT, what is the EOF, and then somehow I could answer that. And then so that's why I start to digging what is actually the EOF, what is the FFT, what's wrong when we use it, and that's why I end up these two talks today. So and then just realize because the EOF is nonlinear, it's a linear process. So we can, in our climate research we have to handle a lot of nonlinear and the non-stationary signal. So if we use the linear methods, and somehow that will restrict our result and then make it very complicated. So I give you some example animation to show you what happened to the EOF. So say if we have like two waves, propagate from north to the south and the east to the west. If we have these two type of wave happening somewhere in the Pacific, if we add up these two, just add up these two waves, we got another one, just like the left hand side. To become like a chessboard pattern, the wave move pattern just on is like showing on the left hand side. So if this is like something happened in the Pacific. If you use the EOF, you'll get the right hand side pattern. And then for the first mode, the second mode is just like a slightly shift. As long as the next pattern is orthogonal to this pattern, then that will be the second mode. But you won't be able to separate back to what we saw before these two, the vertical and horizontal wave. No way. So like last time when I present the group meeting, Terry asked me, what if we use the REOF or COF? REOF or COF maybe can solve one pattern, but not two. Okay, just outline for these two talks I will cover. But today, mainly I'll introduce a lot of basic things because this is something maybe we never heard before. Particularly like the first three things, and then I'll start to introduce EEMD. I'll spend more time to demonstrate what is EEMD, and then the last part I'll present the multi-dimension EEMD. And then the next week I'll present more EEMD and then the westerly wind event rather than called the burst. I'll show you more things, and then I'll show you the model result, the SSCM2 result by next time. So I already show you the some issue if we use the EOF. So how about what happened to the FFT? But before we talk about FFT, just show you these two signals. The blue curve is just like when we like a volcano, or like what we call the delta functions. It's like when you clap your hands, just one signal like that. And then the red curve is like a noise, it just randomly happened. So if you use the Fourier transform, the FFT Fourier transform, to give you an idea, it's like why you have that the delta function is because of, say, 65 million years ago, one dinosaur dead. So that dinosaur caused that peak, or caused the volcano happened. That's based on Fourier theory, but I think we know that's impossible, because volcano happened, or when I collect the hand, because I want to collect the hand to show you that signal, rather than because of million years ago there's a dinosaur dead or something happened. These two talks I think is pretty casual, so stop me at any time if you have any questions. I will try to just speak. I will try to spend only 30 minutes and then 30 minutes for questions. But of course, I can keep talking for 2 hours, no problem. Okay, so Fourier is basically just like this. We will have a lot of sine and cosine, cosine theta, sine theta, cosine 2 theta, sine 2 theta, whatever. We got a lot of this kind of the beautiful sine wave or the symmetrical wave. If this wave didn't line up, and then we add up everything, so all the signals will cancel each other, and then that's why we get the noise. But if we line up those signals, say at like the 60-something seconds, if we line up all the amplitude, we add up all those signals, then we can get that blue curve, right? That's just a very, very basic Fourier transform only. So if these two, we plot the spectrum of these two, delta function and then the render noise, you got the same spectrum. So what's going on is because Fourier is based on something like this. This equation we use almost 900 years. The cosine A plus B, cosine A plus C plus cosine A minus B, or equal to 2 cosine A times cosine B. We use this one more than almost 900 years, but in mathematics, that's okay. The signal, like in Fourier, is assumed the signal is infinity, so can continue to happen. So that's why I say I collect the hands because of 65 million years ago, one dinosaur dead. That signal caused me to collect my hand. But in the mathematics, that's okay. But in the physics, that doesn't make sense. So that's why I say Fourier have some issue. In mathematics, that's right. But in the physics, it's something we have to reconsider. And the other thing, we go back to this signal. Even we add out the signal, all the sine, cosine, whatever, we add out all together, we got a very beautiful peak there. But can we really see the actual signal here? No, we can't. There's nothing. Because it all looks really uniform. There's no one signal at all. No one signal looks like that blue curve. So that's the issue for the Fourier. Okay, that I introduced somehow there's some kind of issue with EOF and the FFT. Second, I want to introduce the signal modulations. I give this talk 3-4 years ago at Monash in Dimas Enzo workshop. And then I think that time maybe it's too early to introduce these things. And then people, Dimas say like I'm playing the math. Okay, today I think I prepared already I spent 3 years trying to study these things. So I think I can introduce well to you guys. Modulation is just like the radio. If you still listen to the radio, like AM 775 or 74 in the morning, if you listen, the AM or the FM, that's the amplitude modulation or the frequency modulation. That's the signal modulate. We usually will be more familiar with the frequency modulation and the amplitude modulations. We don't really use the phase, the piece of phase modulation. We don't really use that much. Okay, that's just an animation to show you what is the modulation. So the blue curve at the top, really top, that's our true signal. And then we have the carrier, the red curve, looks like very high frequency things. And then if we somehow perturb the amplitude, we got the green curve, that's the so-called amplitude modulations. And then if we change the density of the frequency, that's the bottom one, that's the frequency modulations. The basic, mathematical function for these things, I think you can find it from the Wikipedia. It's everywhere there. But just want to introduce you guys. Most of the signal we saw in the climate signal mostly is like this, either amplitude modulations or the frequency modulations. For example, I used this. The left-hand side is from Terry's paper 2-3 years ago. Yeah, he plotted EOF and then the principal component for the EOF. You can see it's pretty rough, noisy, and then he tried to do the running, I think 90 days or 90 days or something. Try to do the running window, try to get the average, but it seems like the signal embedded in those noise. So you can see the density is different in some gap, and then the amplitude is different. So this is the true signal we saw in the real world. So that's the modulations. So I already introduced these modulation things, and then just want to give you some idea. No need to really understand what is that. Just give you some idea only. And then the third thing is really important for the method I'm going to introduce is instantaneous frequency. Okay, frequency. Usually we say the frequency is 1 divided by the period, just a reverse of the period. So it's a one wave number divided by the period. And that's only work in the simple symmetrical waves, like sine and cosine. It doesn't work in the non-stationary or nonlinear systems. Just like I showed you before. Oh. Something like this, yeah, the amplitude change, the frequency change. Actually, if you really count, yeah, you can't really find the frequency based on the traditional method. So that's why we have to introduce the instantaneous frequency. And I don't want to introduce too much because the basic theory is based on Hilbert transform. I don't want to touch that. I just want to give you a very, very simple idea. The way we calculate the frequency in here is based on the phase. The phase change is a delta phi by delta t. So the per second or per whatever the time of the phase change that we define as a frequency. So like I'm showing on the bottom side is the plot in here. So that's the phase plot. So if you have one cosine or sine wave, to finish one wave, the phase change will make one whole circle. If you look at the, like say, for example, the NJO, you have something like that. You have the phase, you have to run the circle, some kind of idea. So to finish one wave, you have the phase will change in one circle and back to whatever the started. So per delta t, the phase change, that's the definition for the instantaneous frequency. So make an animation will be easier, like this. It's very smooth. So once you finish the whole, like 2 pi, then you will finish one wave. And in here, the per delta t change of for the phi, delta phi by delta t, that's the frequency. So you can see it's in here is very smooth. You never jump. And then the distance, the radians is the amplitude of the wave. So it's pretty smoothly in here. So what if the suddenly like this wave didn't make the round circle, like suddenly jump to somewhere here and come back and jump and then come back, or even run faster, then that means they tell us straight away the frequency change. So we don't use the 1 by period, that kind of a very simple concept. We use the delta phi by delta t as the frequency. I will tell you why this is important for this later. So now I introduce what happened to the real signal. First, UF and FFT have some issue. Second, the signal have modulations in the amplitude or in the frequency. The third, we don't use the traditional frequency. We use instantaneous frequency is to describe the nonlinear and non-stationary signal is more correct. Okay, now I'm going to introduce what's EEMD. Any question now? I know it's nothing related to our climate things, but actually we are dealing with time series every day, so I think it's important to go through this. Particularly, I have 2 papers will be submitted soon. I hope I can broadcast those things to most of people, otherwise they will reject my paper straight away. As I say, I won't introduce the Hilbert transfer, whatever, and I won't introduce the Holo span. That's too much things. Only the EEMD. Okay, before I talk about that, I just want to show you what's the difference between the traditional FFT and then the Hilbert transform. Just if you look at the equation pretty straight away, you can see in the Fourier, the amplitude is fixed based on your frequency, the omega. The omega is also fixed. But in the Hilbert transform, the amplitude is the function of time. And then the omega is also a function of time. That's the main difference. So you can actually find the real signal at each time step. There's no limit here. Okay, for example, if I say hello, and then the signal looks like the left-hand side I want. Before I started, this is like flat, nothing, noise. And when I start to say hello, become like this, and then finish. By traditional FFT, will give you the power strong, something like this. We'll try to give you a lot of those high frequency signal to harmonic your true signal, which is unreal. We don't have those signal at all. So if we introduce the Fourier transform, the Hilbert transform or the EEMD, the new spectrum will look like this. We have the high frequency. We can see the hello is in here. And then we'll have some other low frequency, maybe the echo from my chest or something. There's really a low frequency in here. And if I put another curve, maybe it will give you some familiar idea. That's a wavelet, because wavelet is just like a reverse design. You can see that. Yeah. Why wavelet the spectrums look like this? Because wavelets depend on the degree of freedom. In the low frequency, most of the signal cannot be used because it's not significant at all. But like I said before, because we are using instantaneous frequency, so if you give me as long as you give me 3 points, I can calculate the omega, the frequency. So yeah.
In the top right, what's the rate of
the surrogate, but actually I just want to show you the blue one. It's the averaged or the standardized signal for the ray color. We just only focus on the original, the blue curve. Yeah. Yes. Oh, this is the frequency. So the high frequency and the low frequency. Just like the wavelet, but reverse. Yeah. Top. The 4,000 hertz. Oh no, high frequency. Yeah, sorry, high frequency. Yeah. So I should reverse. Yeah, should reverse that. Yeah. You can see 500 at the top. Yes, 500 at the top. Yeah. The low frequencies at the bottom. So I should reverse. The ray curve. Yeah. So like for the wavelets, all those signals in here cannot be used other than the top. Yeah, the low frequency cannot be used at the two ends because of degree frequency resolutions cannot be used. But in the Hubert transfer, everything we can use. The EEMD is introduced by Norton Huang. For the last 2-3 years, when I went back to Taiwan, and I always asked him to give me a lecture, and then he's pretty good to teach me those things. And yeah, he always proud of himself. If you look at the Fei-Fei's paper, the Ansel paper from Fei-Fei 1997, that paper has been cited 8,000 times, and then Norton Huang always say, oh, see, my paper has been cited 18,000 times. So it's much more than that. Yeah, he's a bit of proud of himself. Okay, what is EEMD? I just give you a very, very simple signal, the blue curve. The big blue curve with the high frequency signal. So if we have a signal like this, the blue and the high frequency, and then back to the blue, the low, how we can separate? Because from here you can know this seems like there's two signals here, and then definitely there's something changed in the frequency. So for the EEMD, the method to separate that signal is try to calculate the upper envelope and then the lower envelope, and then you calculate, and then you find the mean of these two envelopes, which will be the blue curve in the middle. The blue curve in the middle. So your original signal, subtract that blue curve signal. That blue curve is in here, this one. Once you subtract this one, you got the high frequency things in here. And then your original signal subtract the high frequency, and then you get this signal back. So by using this method, you can separate the signal. And this method is nonlinear method. But when people ask me, like in January this month in Hobart, the people ask me what's the mechanism to do this? There's no mechanism, no physical meaning why we do this. Can I explain? It's something like to see is to believe. Yeah, you do that, you get it, and then that's it. But what's the meaning? Don't know. But that's the basic to separate the signal. So that's why Harun asked me if I can use 1 or 2 sentences to describe the EEMD. It's very difficult because there's no meaning. You just plot the upper envelope and the lower envelope, and you find the mean. You subtract the mean of the envelopes to separate the signal. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So. Okay. Yeah. Any questions? Oh, okay. Harun just want to ask me more details, how to separate this signal. Yeah, I'm going to show. Before I show this one, and actually in here, I already put in here, I want to ask like whether you want me to go through the details or not. Since Harun asked, so okay, let's go through the details. So, if a signal like this, rather than like before, we have like a very beautiful curve and then a very noisy curve. This one's up and down, anything. Yeah, we can't. So still, we can calculate the envelope function. I use the polynomial or the whatever. There's a lot of methods you can find the best curve to fit for the upper envelope, and the other you can find that's the lower part of the envelope. And that's another thing. It's like you try to find the maximum of all the top signal, and you try to link together. Then that's why you got the upper envelope. You find the extreme, the maximum, minimum, and link together. Then you can get the bottom envelope. And then you do the mean of these two. You get the red curve The red curve is our now the mean of the two envelopes. So like I said before, your original signal subtract this red curve, and then you can get you can separate the signal. But wasn't that easy because you have to do many times. There's a criteria to stop because at this stage, the mean of the envelope is still curvy. We don't want it. We want to repeat these things until that red curve is flat. That's first criteria. Second criteria is like, yes. Oh, later I'll come back to you. Abhishek asked like why we have to make the red curve become flat. I'll explain that. So where am I? Let me see. Red curve. Okay, yeah. The theory is based on Hilbert transform. Okay, but I don't want to go too far. We use one simple thing to explain it. Okay. No, maybe we'll go back to the one I showed before. Here. Do you remember I say how we calculate the instantaneous function of frequency? We want to make that curve, right? And we want to steady in that curve. We don't want the curve to go up and down, become like a oval, or to change the. We want to just as possible, in the circle. So that means if we make it in the same circle, that means the frequency is the same in everywhere. So to remove that mean of the amplitude functions is trying to do that, to concentrate the curve, everything back to that circle. So at the end, if we remove the envelope and then become, when the mean of envelope become like a flat, when you plot this kind of phase functions will be like this. Yeah, although maybe still the curvy, but the frequency will be the same because it's steady. Yeah. So that's the main criteria we wanted to make the mean of the envelope to be 0. We want to grab everything back, and then when you plot the delta phi by delta t is the same everywhere. Okay. If you don't understand, come back to me, no problem. So after several times iterations, and finally we make the red curve become really flat. But cannot do too many times. If I do like a million times, you eventually become 0. Everything will become 0. Because when we have the pure sine wave, the upper and the lower boundary is the same, and then you do the average, actually it's still the same. So cannot do too many times. So we do like roughly almost become like a 0 and stop. And then the last one the product we got will be like this. In here, eventually the frequency of every point is the same. But you say, oh, that's sometimes bigger, sometimes small. But you have to think per time, per delta t, the phase change is the same. And then we subtract this one from the original data. And then we keep doing that. And then that's how we get something like this. So the top is the original functions. Like I show here, it's pretty noisy. But if you keep working on you apply the EEMD, and you can get the high frequency and the second high, and then get more low frequency, and then the residual or the trend. So from here you can see it's something already like a sine or cosine things. So that's the method of EEMD. Yep. Any question so far? And then there's maybe two things I want to explain. Okay, sure.
So like, how many times, if you did about 3 or 4 iterations of that, but did you get different frequencies out of that? Or because you seem to get different frequencies on this plot.
Okay.
But did you get different frequencies out of that process? Because you seem to get the same frequency out of that last plot as the one you had before.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe she want to ask like how many iterations or do it when the frequency things. I try to answer that because I think it's pretty important. There's 2 things in here.
Because you've got different amplitudes now, but you've got the same frequency.
Yeah. In here, first, it's like we put the fruits in the box. If you have 8 different variety fruit inside, you only can take out 8 fruits. It's not like EOF. EOF you can do maybe 100 times. Yeah. So it depends on whatever you have in the real signal. You only can get that much. So you can't do too many things. However, sometimes the frequency is pretty close to each other. Like in here, you can see, particularly like the 5 and 6. Actually, you can look at them; they are really close. It seems like they are the same things. Yeah. So sometimes when we do the EEMD, we have to plot and then to check the spectrum and to make sure actually sometimes they are the same function, same signal, and then we have to put them together.
Yeah, I'd have to sit down and actually watch you go through a process.
So like C2 and C3 actually describing the same things in here, and then 5 and 6 actually the same thing in here. But like also like Siobhan say, what if the amplitude change like here? We can separate that, but at this stage I don't want to introduce that so-called Holo spectrum.
Yeah.
That's why I highlight out in here.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a real world example where you might get, as you get very similar things like ENSO, the decadal signal, and you're not really separating things.
Yeah. That's a Holo spectrum. Holo spectrum can separate the frequency modulation and then amplitude modulation, but in here, what I introduce mostly is a frequency only. So I don't really touch the frequency like part, amplitude like part. But of course, like ENSO, if we can separate the frequency and also the amplitude modulation, that'll be good as well. But at this stage, we just keep them together because at this stage they are the same frequency, so we just keep them together.
Okay, we'll probably talk about when I'm next in the office.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's the way we separate the. You are smoothing out the low frequency. Yeah, you are smoothing out the low frequency and keep the high frequency stay. Because the envelope is always the big chunk. And then you keep whatever the noise inside. So eventually low frequency will be kicked out first, and then you get high frequency. That's why the C1 always the really high frequency. Yeah. And then you subtract that one from the original data and keep doing that, you got the second one. So that's why 3 years ago when I gave this talk in Monash, in Cosima, Dima also asked me because if you apply this one on the ENSO, the first one will be like 2 years or 3 years data. And he asked me why you select 2 years or 3 years, but actually for me, I didn't select anything. I didn't choose the cutting period. It's just like, oh, you got apple, I got apple out. You got a banana, I got banana out only. I don't know what's your frequency. You are the highest frequency, so I take out. That's it. That's why I say the method is like this. No physical meaning. So if you ask me, use 1 or 2 sentences to explain why, maybe just to see or to believe. Nothing else. Or we try to keep the closest frequency together and then remove it. And then the close signal, we found it and put it together and removed. But we don't know what's the frequency at all. So that's why for us as a climate research is knowing things. Once we have this kind of time series, we have to do something to check what's the meaning for each of them. Otherwise, it is meaningless for us. It's different to like other, like they use this a lot in medical or hospital. Like later I'll show you something. Yeah, for them it's easier, but for us we need to find the physical meaning for each component. So that's why, yeah. No, doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, that's another suite for these things. I don't care which period you use. I can use just from here to here. Anytime, any window, you got exactly the same things. Oh, yeah. So when you plot the envelope function, it doesn't matter your length of the data. It's just that area you choose, the period you choose, that affect only. Yeah. So I choose here, I choose here, I choose here. Won't be different. Yeah, see, yes. Huh?
Can you find?
Yes.
Can you decompose?
Yeah. Yes.
Can you
MD2, yes.
decompose?
Okay, yes, can. So like in here, we are mainly we are talking about the omega actually. But MD2 we can do it by the same things. Then that will be Holo Huang spectrum. That's why I'm not talking today. That's Holo Hilbert spectrum. So from the Holo spectrum, that give you not only frequency but also the amplitude change. I think you can check Holo spectrum. Just you can find it. It's published. Hmm? Oh. Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, you like it so much. Okay, so I just download the PDO from the website. I don't want to generate by myself, so I just use the observation data and then decompose it into A modes. The first two I just throw away because it's high frequency. I don't be bothered. So from here you can see there's three. Each time the C1, C2, C3, we call it. There's a name for that. We call it. It's like a mode in the UF, but we don't call it mode because mode is fixed. This mode is a function of time, so we call it intrinsic mode function. It's a function. It's not just a fixed mode. It's varied by the time. So theta, yeah, the theta. No, theta is a function of time. This is omega, the phase. Yeah. No, it's not constant. It's a function of time. So.
By omega times t.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Omega. Yeah.
No,
yeah, but the omega will be the omega will be
higher than omega 2.
Omega will be the function of time as well, because omega is the delta phi delta t. Oh yeah, sorry. Okay, go back to maybe I'll show Ian more this one. This simplified like from here, because the omega is here, and then after you integrate, will become like phi, but the phi is still the function of time. It's different to the Fourier. Fourier and omega is fixed. Omega 1 is omega 1. So okay, we're back to here. It's okay. The bottom one is about omega 1, omega 2, omega 3, omega 4. It's fixed. The omega is not a function of time. The frequency is fixed in the Fourier. Oh, amplitude also, but I didn't show in here. Amplitude is just assume it's A. Yeah, the A, but in here didn't really show that.
This is EEMD,
Yeah.
and what are you showing us now?
Yes, it's because if you have the pure sine and just have a little noise on the top of in some point, if you use the EMD, cannot really separate that. So you need to put a little white noise to separate it. It sounds kind of like a kick. You kick the envelope functions, and then you can get it. And sorry, I didn't introduce that because I think just skip that. Yeah, but that's just the same to the EMD, only adding extra white noise each time. White noise will be eliminated each time when you do the envelope function. Eventually, that will be disappear. That will be deleted. No way. Yeah, I try, but it's okay. Yeah, but later I got more thing to make you more headache. Yep. So I'll finish it soon. Okay, so PDO we separate into these 6 mode or IMF, and then I just regrade back to the SST. You can see the pattern, sort of like the high frequency ones. The mode 4, you can see it's in here, sort of like an ENSO pattern, and 6 is more like a decadal signal. It's like a PMN. So you compare to the spectrum in here, the Fourier spectrum. So you got the 2-3 years, 3-4 years, 5 to 7 years, and then 10 years, and multi-decadal at the bottom. So one PDO actually contains a lot of signal in here. So when you use this index to do the correlation regression to tell me the teleconnection of whatever, which time band you're talking about, the interannual, decadal, or whatever. So that's why I say sometimes you have to separate the signal and tell me which time band you are using. Regret. Yeah, regret. You just regret time series, the IMF back to the SST. Yeah, at the bottom. So it's like a 0.6 degree or yeah. Oh, the variance you're talking about is like a EOF things, like how many percent you explain, right? Each part is important for everything because that tell you the different things. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So you can see actually the 7 and 8 is quite low compared to 6. 6 you still can have like up to 0.4, 0.5 degrees C after you regrade it. So. Yeah. 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 So the whole spectrum of each mode. Clear?
Comment.
It's just like a
pattern 7. The time series of pattern 7 like more what you'd commonly call the PDO in terms of the frequency, sort of like a 20 year type pattern.
Sorry, second.
The pattern for IMF 7 looks like the more common sort of frequency you would see for a PDO. The others were much more high frequency.
Oh, yes. Like Haron I have the paper with Scott Power, the IPO. After you do the 13 years filtering, yeah, you only focus on the like IMF 7 or 8. Yeah, that will enhance the signal.
Yeah,
but you can see actually it's pretty low.
IMF8 looks more like a sort of long-term trend across that time frame, and the shorter ones are more like a decadal pattern.
But as you can see, after you grab back to the SST, the value is very low. It's only like a 0.2 or less than 0.2. I don't. Very small, very small.
I couldn't see the amplitude on those thumbnails.
So you just see the color bar.
Okay, the color bar, yeah.
Yeah, you can compare. Actually, it's only 0.2, 0.3 only. So if you plot the full spectrum of the PDO, there's no decadal signal. Very, very weak.
Yeah.
That's why I argue with Scott Power. Okay, the other example is if we plot the PMM, the Pacific Meridional Mode. Yeah, a lot of people talk about this one. This one will enhance the CP, El Nino, whatever. And then if I separate and regress back to the SST, and again, actually the first two more actually talking about more like a La Nina stuff. And then until the 5th, 6th, 7th, from the pattern is more like a meridional mode. So when people like use the index of a PMN to do some teleconnection, then again, which one you are talking about? That's my question, and that's why I do this research to tell people which one you're doing. Yeah, low pass filter you lose at least 3-4 years data at the end to end. But this one you lose 1 month or 1 point. Much more clear. You see? Yeah. I think today maybe I'll just introduce up to here, and then the multi-dimension I'll try next time. And then next time I'll introduce more our model result by using this research, and to tell you whether we have the whistling bursts as a noise or is the oscillations, and why our model is so frequent in the El Nino, just by this method. Any other questions?
Shall we pause there and thank Arnold just before we go for questions? We have had a few questions already, but I think there's maybe 5 minutes for a few more. We'll continue the discussion.
So you've got the Hilbert transform when both the amplitude and the frequency are functions of time. Can you get a unique result out of that, or is it not well enough determined if you've got too many degrees of freedom? Does the Hilbert transform give you a unique result? Because both the amplitude and frequency are functions of time. So you've got a lot of degrees of freedom there. So it's not unique.
You can change the resolution can change based on whatever the sample you want to use. So you can get but of course it will be close to there. But you can zoom in or zoom out, depends on which part you want to see. Is that clear? Or you want me to show you more? Just have to throw away the degree of freedom. No such things, because degree of freedom is just part of these things. It's just this one combine everything. Yeah, the degree of freedom for FFT or for the Hilbert transfer is just like I want to zoom in. Yeah.
No one is talking. So, I mean, so it does some sort of decomposition, okay?
Yes.
So now, I mean, I have heard you talking a few times. Still, I'm trying to get my. I mean, definitely, it's perhaps useful for other things like for synthesis and analysis of signals,
yes,
and signal detection maybe.
Yes.
But for climate science, I mean, so I'm looking at all these components here. I mean, what do you make of it? You can identify familiar patterns like La Nina or El Nino or whatever, and then PDO.
Yeah.
In case of UF, for example, when you get some useful information like the patterns are arranged according to their explained variance,
Yes.
and I can just keep 4 or 5 patterns and then throw out the other, still explaining 80% of the total variability.
Yeah.
And then I can claim that, okay, this is the most dominant pattern, so we just concentrate on this and ignore the details, okay? That kind of physical explanation you give. So what is that similar useful kind of like information that you extract from it?
Yeah. Okay, because today we didn't go through the multi-dimension. Today I only talk about one dimension only. This one can use for the multi-dimension. EOF or the PMN or PDO is based on the PMN, based on EOF or multi-variable MV, NDV or MVD. Similar to the EOF way to get the component out. EOF depends on the region you choose. If you choose different region, or if you don't if you don't filter out the 13 years, you won't get your data at all. But for the multi-dimension, if you apply onto the multi-dimension, you get whatever you want, and then doesn't matter to any regions.
But you applied it to time series only, not spatiotemporal data like EOF. So
yeah,
do you have
today only talked about that, but the next time I'll introduce you, actually you can back to the space as well.
Yeah.
Next time I'll talk about more in space.
I think another useful, because you are kind of like trying to promote this, so another useful thing to do would be to say there are other methods of decomposing time series, like say singular spectrum analysis.
Yes.
There are other sorts of spectrum analysis like multi-taper.
Yeah.
So if you can compare your method
yeah.
with those methods and how it differs and how it complements, I think that will be useful.
Because SVD is still the linear method, so SVD is a linear, so it's same to the EOF. Like I showed you before, the chess patterns, yeah, cannot separate.
I think that's a good point to break off. So thank you, Arnold, for phase 1. We look forward to the results in part 2 in 2 weeks' time. So this has been recorded. I'm not sure what you wanted to do with the recording. Do you want to make it widely available? We'll talk about that in a bit. So can we thank Arnold one more time?